I was not going to say this out loud, not because it is dangerous in some dramatic movie way, but because once you hear it, you cannot go back to the version of you who did not. So lean in. Just you and me. No comments, no noise, no performance. Bookmark this feeling because it is the exact moment before a door clicks shut behind you. Have you noticed how the world has a new sound lately? Not volume, not music. A signal. It is in the pauses people take before they answer. It is in the way headlines repeat the same shapes with different names. It is in the tiny tension you feel when you scroll, like your brain is trying to warn you without words. Most people will hear it too late and then pretend they heard it earlier. That is how it works. The mind hates being last. I am not here to scare you. I am here to name the pattern, slowly, so you can recognize it when it brushes past you again. Because something is coming, and the real question is not if it arrives, but what it asks of you when it does. And if you feel that drop in your stomach, good. To understand what's coming, you have to see what's already here. Here is the deal. I am going to give you 3 signals you can watch for. One turning point most people miss while they argue about symptoms. And one action plan you can use this week to stay steady when the noise spikes. Not theory for the sake of theory. Patterns, incentives, and practical interpretation. So you can decide what is real for you instead of borrowing someone else's panic. We are going to move fast, but not sloppy. If something is uncertain, I will call it a possibility. If something is obvious, I will show you why. The point is not to believe me. The point is to notice what you have been sensing, then put language to it. And there is one detail, just one, that makes all of this impossible to ignore once you see it. It is not a secret file or a shocking headline. It is a simple filter you can run on what you hear, and once it clicks, the first 2 signals stop looking random. I will tell you what to do when the signal hits, so you do not freeze. Stay with me, because the last piece reframes the first 2. First, we need to talk about why this feels louder now. Listen closely. The volume did not increase by accident. The old normal was quiet. You followed routines, accepted little frictions, and kept your doubts in the background. Information came in neat packages, and most of life happened off-screen. Even when something felt wrong, the noise around it was soft enough to ignore. The new normal is the opposite. Everything surfaces. Every opinion is published. Every mistake is clipped. Every private fear is marketed back to you. We are saturated, and saturation changes people. Attention became the real currency, so everything competes for it. That competition rewards speed, heat, and certainty, because nuance does not trend. At the same time, patience is shorter. You can feel it in your own body. Less tolerance for waiting, more craving for instant answers. And then skepticism rises. Not the healthy kind that asks questions, but the restless kind that assumes the story is always incomplete. So we refresh, we scroll, we listen harder, and the signal gets louder. This is not someday. It is already in motion. Here are the stakes. If you misread what is happening, you waste months chasing distractions. You spend money reacting instead of planning. And you lose peace by carrying alarms you cannot verify. Some people even lose relationships because they cannot explain what they sense, only that they feel it. So before we talk solutions, we have to name what people keep calling random. If you catch them early, you gain space to move, while others argue noise. Now, here are the first signals people are misreading. If you have felt off lately, pay attention. Sometimes your brain notices the pattern before you can name it. It shows up as restlessness, irritation, and sudden déjà vu. Look at the week we just lived through. Another crisis, another outrage, another "this changes everything" headline. Then 2 days later, a new one replaces it, like the last one never happened. The faces change, the keywords change, but the rhythm stays the same. Even in your personal life it echoes. Work surges, constant alerts, late nights. Then a crash, then a promise to reset, then the cycle restarts. People call it random because that is easier than admitting it is repetitive. Random means no one is responsible, and you do not have to adjust. But repetition is a fingerprint. When the same kinds of stories keep returning, it usually means a system is under strain. And the strain is starting to show through the surface. Someone I know had a moment that made it obvious. They were proud of how informed they were, always up to date, always ready with the latest take. But one night they said, almost embarrassed, "I feel like I am living the same week over and over." They could predict the next outrage before it arrived. Not because they were psychic, but because the incentives were predictable. Attention loves extremes. Algorithms reward reaction. And stressed people click what validates their mood. That is signal one, the loop. When everything repeats, the problem is not the individual headline. The problem is the machine that needs your emotion to keep running. Once you see the loop, you stop asking what happened today, and you start asking what pattern is being fed. Hold that thought, because the second signal is the one that hits closer, because it is inside your habits. Notice what you do when you have 10 quiet minutes. Not what you plan to do, what you actually do. Most people reach for the same glowing rectangle without thinking, like their hand is on a string. And that is not an accident. That is signal two. Attention is being rewired and you can feel it. The old normal was deep focus. You could sit with a problem long enough to understand it. You could read something difficult, feel confused, and keep going until the meaning landed. The new normal is constant pings. Meaning gets replaced by stimulation. Not because you are weak, but because everything around you is engineered to reward the next hit. It starts innocent. A quick check, a short video, a notification you do not want to miss. Then your mind begins to expect life to come in bursts. When nothing is happening, you feel restless. When something is happening, you cannot stay with it. Even joy gets thinner, because it has to compete with 1,000 louder options. Here is the scary part. It starts to feel normal. You tell yourself you are just busy, just multitasking, just staying informed. But a rewired attention span makes people easier to steer and harder to satisfy. If I can pull your focus, I can pull your mood. If I can pull your mood, I can pull your decisions. And when you are always half hungry for the next thing, you buy, you argue, you chase, and you never quite arrive. Living like this is like surviving on mental fast food. It fills you fast, but it does not nourish you. You crave more, you feel worse, and you blame yourself instead of the menu. So ask the uncomfortable question. Who benefits from a population that cannot sit still with its own thoughts? Keep that question close. And then comes the third signal, the one you cannot unhear. After this, you will start hearing it everywhere. Not in speeches, but in the little sentences people let slip when they think no one is paying attention. Signal 3 is the moment the quiet part gets said out loud. The quiet part is not a secret plan. It is the incentive hiding under the polite story. It is the gap between what people say they value and what their behavior rewards. Think about work. The old story was loyalty and stability. The promise that if you keep your head down and do good work, you will be taken care of. The new reality shows up in one meeting where someone says calmly, "This is not personal. It is business." In other words, results matter more than relationships, and everyone is replaceable. Or look at media and culture. The old story was information and public service. The new reality is someone admitting, "We have to keep people watching." That one sentence explains the constant urgency, the exaggerated conflict, the endless hot takes. Engagement becomes the real product, and your attention pays the bill. Even in relationships, it appears. People talk about honesty, then punish honesty. People say they want peace, then choose drama because it feels like certainty. The double standard is not the point. The point is what it reveals. Once you hear the quiet part, you cannot unhear it. You start noticing how often decisions are made for convenience, profit, or status, then dressed up as principle. You stop taking words at face value, and you begin listening for the engine underneath. This is not about becoming cynical. It is about becoming fluent. Because the moment incentives are spoken, the mask slips, and the whole room changes. And when it changes, you notice it in yourself too. You feel the urge to either look away or lean closer. Choose closer. So what does it actually mean? What is coming? This is where most people freeze because they want certainty before they move. Here is what is coming, and I need you to hear it the right way. Not doom, not a sudden collapse. A shift. A choice point era where the gap between truth and comfort gets so wide you cannot stand in the middle anymore. The world does not end. It accelerates. And in acceleration, masks do not stay on. You have already seen the early version. The loops that keep repeating, the attention that feels thinner, the quiet incentives finally spoken aloud. Put them together and you get the real reveal. The coming thing is a forced decision about what you listen to, signal or noise, reality or the story that feels easier. For reactive people, acceleration feels like punishment. They wake up late, grab the first explanation that calms them, then defend it like a religion. They share before they think. They spend money to soothe anxiety. They drift into arguments, then wonder why they feel empty. They keep waiting for someone to tell them, officially, what is happening. Prepared people do something different. They accept uncertainty early, so it does not crush them later. They build filters. They protect attention like it is oxygen. They watch incentives instead of slogans. And when the next wave hits, they do not panic because they already chose how they will respond. That is the dividing line. Not intelligence. Not politics. Not luck. Choice. And the reason it matters is simple. Once the shift reaches full speed, you will not have time to build the muscles you needed months ago. So no, I am not predicting a catastrophe. I am telling you the room is getting louder and the rules are becoming visible. You can pretend you do not hear it, or you can train your ears now on purpose. But there is one detail that makes this unavoidable. This single filter turns confusion into clarity. Here is the unavoidable detail. Once you learn to see incentives, you start hearing subtext everywhere. The words on the surface stay the same, but your brain begins to translate the hidden sentence underneath. You realize that most messages are not trying to inform you. They are trying to move you. That is why it cannot be unheard. Because incentives do not switch off when you look away. They keep shaping what gets promoted, what gets softened, and what gets punished. And when you spot the incentive, The emotional spell breaks. You stop arguing about the headline and start reading the motive. So I want to give you a simple 3-question filter. Use it on a post, a pitch, a trend, even a friend who suddenly sounds certain. First, who wins if I believe this? Not who says it, who benefits from me adopting it as truth. Second, what does this train me to do? Does it push me toward fear, spending, outrage, dependence, or mindless sharing? Third, what does it cost me to ignore? Attention, peace, relationships, long-term plans? My ability to think for myself. If you ask those 3 questions, you will notice something wild. A lot of noise collapses instantly, and the remaining signal becomes clearer, even if it is uncomfortable. That is the whole point. Clarity is not always soothing, but it is stabilizing. And once you have that filter, you cannot go back. Because now you can hear the incentive inside the sentence. At first, you will feel slower, like you are hesitating. Good. That pause is you taking your steering wheel back. When people around you rush, your pause becomes your advantage and your protection right now. And that raises the uncomfortable question. Who benefits? The goal is not fear, it is leverage. When you ask who benefits, do not picture a villain in a dark room. That image makes you powerless and paranoid. Think systems, incentives, feedback loops that reward certain outcomes again and again. Who profits from distraction? Anyone who gets paid when you cannot focus long enough to compare, reflect, or delay gratification. Who profits from division? Anyone who can keep you fighting your neighbor instead of noticing the rules of the game. Division is efficient because it turns complex problems into simple enemies, and simple enemies keep people loyal. And dependency is the big one. When you are constantly overwhelmed, you look for shortcuts, you outsource your thinking, you buy certainty, you join a side, you accept a script. That kind of dependence is valuable because it creates predictable behavior. Predictable people are easy to market to, easy to manage, easy to trigger. None of this requires a mastermind. It only requires that attention is monetized and that outrage converts. Once you understand that, you stop wasting energy hunting for a single culprit and start protecting yourself from the mechanism. Because if it is a system, you can step outside it. You can change your inputs. You can slow your reactions. You can refuse to be trained. That is the empowering part people miss. So do not leave this conversation thinking, they are doing this to us. Leave it thinking, this is how it works, and I can choose how I work with it. And now we finally get to the part that matters most. The part people skip because it sounds too simple. So here is the part that matters, what you do next. You do not need to fix the world, just stop being easy to steer. These 5 moves are small, but they change your position from reactive to ready. First, install a pause protocol. When something spikes your emotion, do nothing for 10 breaths. Ask, what am I feeling, and what would sharing this train me to become? If you want to react, wait 5 minutes. Then write 1 sentence about what you actually know versus what you assume. That gap is where manipulation lives. Second, curate your inputs with a 1-in, 1-out rule. For every new account, channel or feed you add, remove 1. Keep sources that correct themselves, not sources that only perform certainty. The goal is not ignorance, it is signal to noise. Fewer inputs means more space for your own judgment to form. Also, put your phone to bed. No feeds for the first and last 30 minutes of your day. That is when your mind is most suggestible. If you protect those edges, the middle of your day becomes calmer, and you stop waking up already behind. You are not cutting off the world. You are choosing how it enters. Third, build a weekly silence block. Put it on your calendar like an appointment. 1 hour with no phone, no tabs, no background audio. Walk, journal, or stare at a wall if you have to. At first, your mind will itch and bargain. That itch is withdrawal from constant stimulation. Stay anyway until your thoughts slow down enough to sort themselves. Fourth, strengthen real-world ties. Once a week, have one long conversation with someone you trust, face-to-face or voice only. No multitasking. Ask them what feels different lately, and tell them what you are noticing without trying to win. Reality gets clearer when it is spoken aloud to a human, not performed for an audience. Fifth, learn one durable skill that compounds. Pick something that makes you more capable no matter what the headlines do. Writing, sales, coding, design, negotiation, fitness. Spend 20 minutes a day and build a tiny project you can point to. Competence calms you because it creates options when everyone else is stuck debating. Do these 5 things and the shift will hit you differently. The noise will still exist, but it will not own you. You will recognize loops faster, resist triggers longer, and choose your next move with calm. Now let us bring it home, because this is where most people misinterpret the message. If you felt your stomach drop earlier, that was not weakness. It was recognition. And I know the objections, because you are probably thinking them right now. Is this just anxiety? Am I overthinking? Am I turning normal stress into a bigger story? That is a fair question, and it matters, because fear makes people impulsive, and impulsive people are easy to steer. So let us separate 2 things. Paranoia is when you invent certainty without evidence, then build your life around it. Awareness is when you notice patterns, check incentives, and choose your response with self-control. Awareness does not demand that you know everything. It only asks that you stop pretending you know nothing. The reason this feels intense is because it is a shift from autopilot to attention. Autopilot is comfortable, attention is work. But attention is also freedom, because it gives you a second between the trigger and the reaction. In that second, you get to decide who you are. That is why I am telling you like this quietly. Not to whip you into a frenzy, but to hand you a lens. You can look away if you want, but now you know the sound exists. And when you hear it again tomorrow, you will understand what it is pointing to. One last thing, if you remember nothing else, remember this. You will notice it within 24 hours if you are paying attention. When the next headline hits, do not ask, "Is this true or false?" First ask, "What does this want from me? Does it want my outrage? My fear, my money, my loyalty, my time?" Protect your attention like it is a front door. Follow incentives until the story explains itself. Then choose signal over noise, even when noise is louder. If you do that, you will stop feeling like you are behind. You will feel steadier, because you are living from your choices, not from your triggers. And the weird part is, people around you will start to copy your calm, because calm is rare now. I want to hear from you. What is the moment you experienced that you cannot unhear? The sentence, the pattern, the shift that changed how you listen. Drop it in the comments and read a few others. You will realize you are not alone. If you want part 2, I will share the simple daily checklist I use to filter noise fast and stay focused. Subscribe and keep this close. The signal is already here. And if this helped, send it to one person who needs a clearer head right now today too.